Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I'm your host, Cryptidmasterkd, and the horrifying creature that's stalking you in the fields. I want to say hi to all my supporters and let you all know I'm active on TikTok now if you want to go check that out. Now, on to the show. In my last video, I did a story about a man who we now know as St. Patrick, and how he encountered a town of werewolves. But in today's stories, I'm taking you to a place and time when werewolves were considered very real. And two people who confessed to being werewolves. I'm Cryptidmasterkd, and this is Cryptid History Lore. Rawr! The first story I'm telling you takes place in 1589. Now, Hollywood has given us tons and tons of movies of werewolves ever since the 1900s. And we have nowadays considered werewolves to be nothing more than myths and legend and movies. Unless you're counting the Dog Man, which is another topic. But what if I were to tell you that back in 1589 particularly, during that time, when Europe was clenched by fear of werewolves, as it was in the small town of Bedburg, Germany. During this time, the people of Bedburg believed they were being hunted by one of those werewolves. The townsfolk lived in fear, and also they had good reason. You see, people who went out in the woods, especially at night, and shepherds, would vanish, never to be seen alive again. And this convinced the people they were being pursued by a werewolf. It had evaded capture for months, if not years, 10 years, in fact. While search parties and werewolf hunts stalked the forest, a young girl named Greta was kidnapped by a man who turned out she knew, told her he was the wolf. The man's name has been long seen in history. Peter Stump. Peter Stump is described in many ways as either being a farmer to a town leader. And in his house, she saw human remains in boiling pots and in crates and saving bags. Peter Stump said he was the werewolf. Now, sometimes in other stories of him, people say he was under torture when he confessed, but this time, but particularly from where I learned this story, said he was a town leader who lived in a house. And 10 years earlier, the girl Greta had stabbed his hand while he was in wolf form, leaving him just scarred. And pretty much, this would stand out even if he was wearing gloves at all times. So he left Bedford, for months while his hand healed. But let's get to the main topic here. Peter Stump nearly killed this girl and nearly added her to his collection of dead. But her father managed to stop him, punching him. And he declared that he was the wolf. And Peter was arrested for his crimes, and under torture, he confessed to being the wolf. Now, what I'm about to say next is pretty gruesome. So if you have kids with you, please tell them to walk away, because what he confessed is very gruesome. Under torture, he confessed to killing 4 children, several men, 2 pregnant women, and that he killed and ate 2 pregnant women, and the pregnant women's fetuses. He said that when he was 12 years old, that the devil came to him and loved him. And in exchange for his soul, he offered what pretty much people would say the devil would offer, and that's power. The devil, he said, gave him a belt made of wolf's hide that he pretty much claimed that when he put on the belt, that it turned him into a greedy, devouring wolf. When he put on the belt, you see, he obviously believed that he was able to transform into a wolf. But honestly, anyway, the belt was never found, and Peter Stump was sentenced to death. Again, this is going to be gruesome, so bear with me. The townspeople tied him to a wheel, and much of his skin was removed with hot pincers. After that, all his limb bones were broken with the blunt end of an axe. After his skin was removed, blood and his bones broken, did they finally turn the axe around and cut off his head. After that, they burned his body, and Peter Stubbs' head was put on a pike in the town square. And underneath it, they carved the figure of a wolf. But we can't just write it off as as Stump's execution a part of just history. You see, the people truly believed he was a werewolf and that they were vanquishing evil. But in the reality, I think, is that we were dealing with a wolf, not a wolf, but a man who believed he was a wolf. And instead, we should put it, in this case, as a serial killer. A cannibalistic serial killer. Right. Now, I'll get to that in a few, after I tell the story of a next man, only a few decades later, who also confessed to being a werewolf. A man named Jean Grenier. Oh, yeah. Jean Grenier. Where? In France. Was a teenager when he was arrested. And suspected of being a werewolf. Like in the events in Bedburg, he was accused of the disappearance of several children and young women. And a young girl actually said, who was a survivor of the attacks, managed to verify the claims. A young girl said that while she was tending to her flocks of sheep with a friend, that they were attacked by a young boy who acted like a werewolf, growling, snarling, snapping, and that he was attacking them. Grenier was described as gaunt, with a strange pointed face, and he was known to wear the skin of a wolf across his back. Kinda like yours. And down the road, when he was finally arrested, he did confess without torture of being a wolf. And he said while out in the woods that a dark figure, again, the devil perhaps, gave him this wolf pelt and a magic salve to put on his skin. When he was and while he was taken into custody and confessed to this, a great act of compassion saved his life. A lawyer, while he confessed and even said that old women tasted like burnt rubber, which kind of embarrassed the court, honestly, a lawyer actually verified that the confessions weren't because he was possessed, although the court dubbed him as a victim of demonic possession. A lawyer spoke up and said that Jean Grenier, even though he confessed, must have been a victim of his disabled brain. And this act saved his life. But the court, however, dubbed him a victim of demonic possession. And rather than being sentenced to death, he was shut up in a friary for the rest of his life. In After his imprisonment, the attacks stopped. And Jean Grenier died not so long, a couple years after, still believing he was a werewolf. Now, with all these stories out of the way and the descriptions I gave to you, as someone with a disability myself, I can safely say that I understand that this probably, with these two cases, wasn't a normal werewolf, thing. Well, back then, a lot of people were tortured into confession. There may be a mental health solution and realization for this. Because in the late 1600s, a man who happened to be a friend of the King of France said to the king, wait a minute, these are mental disorders. You can't just accuse somebody of being a werewolf when someone's under torture. But what could have happened to these two may have been either schizophrenia, autism, it could have been many of those cases, or a mental condition known as mental lycanthropy. Now, the name sounds very similar to that of the condition of lycanthropes, as in werewolf, which is where it kind of got its name. And there were other cases, like with people who were born with hair, but that's not all here in the cars. The condition of lycanthropy can manifest in different ways, like in schizophrenia. It can result with someone actually in their mental state believe that they were a werewolf. This can manifest in howling, snarling, biting, and many other symptoms. Now, before I wrap this video up, there is another solution that I heard that actually had to do with the diets at the time. A mental affliction caused by fungus called St. Anthony's fire. St. Anthony's fire is a deadly disease that can result in hallucinations, loss of several different symptoms, but it ultimately leads to death. And it's caused by a fungus called ergot, which grew on rye, which was a very big part of the diet of the peasantry at the time.
Does it make them crazy?
Yes, it would make them crazy. And this could easily, because of the religious fanatics at the time, could have caused it to be seen as demonic possession or werewolf syndrome.
Who knows?
Who knows? But one thing remains to be true. Werewolves, even today, like with Dogman, Skinwalkers, the Rougarou, all of these people tell stories of encounters with werewolves, which leads us to wonder, do they live among us? Are they still around and they're not completely dead? Or do they live among us? And with that note, I'm going to wrap things up. I'm glad all you came to the channel. Please leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And you better subscribe, because if you don't, I'm going to conjure up a werewolf that'll come after you.
Okay, pizza.
Anyway, I'm Cryptidmasterkd. I love you all. Give me a rah, rah. And with all that, love you all. Peace out.